Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There it is, so you don't miss any of our football content this season. It has been, if I might say, fantastic. College football reactions presented by JLab. JLab has the best audio products in the game. They're ready to take care of you this football season. Traveling to watch your favorite team or just streaming the game at home. Find the Blue Box at Walmart, Target, Best Buy, or go to jlab.com. Love their stuff, the Blue Box. So, all right. So I want to give this some time. USC. We usually do one big college football topic, and since I'm viewed as a USC homer, I might as well just embrace it. So
you're lucky Vanderbilt, Alabama happened. It kind of overshadowed it a little.
Vanderbilt, by the way, is clever. A lot of misdirection. They listen, you come off the Georgia game, and even though it's you can say, well, Nick gave you a Mercedes. Listen, Nick lost to Louisiana Monroe with good players. I mean, Alabama didn't have to rebuild the roster. They had players. They had no coaches. So it happens. They had Vanderbilt fooled them. They weren't ready for it, and it got ugly fast, and now you're trailing, playing from behind. You have to call the game differently. It happens. But I was looking at USC, and I was texting somebody this morning who covers them, and I said, the one thing that jumped out to me, Minnesota played like it was a Rose Bowl. Minnesota, the stadium was full. PJ Fleck, say what you want, brings a ton of intensity. Those guys were jumping all over the place. Their running back was powerful. USC's bad tackling has reemerged, which we thought it was done after the LSU game. It reemerged against Michigan. I saw it again this weekend. And now their offense is young. But when I watched the game plan, John, not a lot of motion, not a lot of different sets from Lincoln Riley. Miller Moss has been in that program now 3 years, okay? This is not a transfer. He knows the offense. They've got some really, their offensive line is young, and at right tackle is a problem. But I got to tell you, I have defended Lincoln to the end. And I defend most coaches. And I think we all know that Lincoln's good offensively. But that loss is not just a loss, John. It feels like one step forward, two back. I don't know if you overcome that. I mean, you're essentially now with their schedule, they're not making the playoff. And no. LA.
And they're not a playoff team, right? I mean, they got that first half last week, I would say, against Wisconsin was a little alarming, was it not?
They were a mistake-prone mess.
So to me, their wins, the Michigan win, which I thought was impressive because you're just watching it live, the physicality, that game has not aged well. Turns out Michigan doesn't know how to execute the forward pass and just lost by 10 against Washington, who I'm not sure is that good. Right. So, and even LSU, which at the time felt like an impressive win because of the brand and because of the name recognition of their players, how many guys are going to get drafted. LSU might turn out to be an 8-win team. So it's like, it's just Ohio State, and we'll see with Oregon. Obviously, they play each other this week. But in terms of the talent on their roster, in kind of a different level right now, and defensively, like they were going to have to hang their hat on that, which looked like they could. It just turns out Michigan's offense is putrid, right? And Wisconsin obviously is not very good on offense either.
Listen, USC, this is the one college roster I know pretty much front and back. USC has 2 playable tackles on their team, and one's not good. So they have a redshirt freshman, Elijah Page, left tackle. He's not good, but he is their future. His backup is a redshirt freshman who is 6'2". He's a center. They have no backup left tackle. You think it's bad now. Mason Murphy, the right tackle, they have a kid behind him, Tobias Raymond. He's not ready to play. They've leaned into Mason Murphy for years. It's just too slow a foot. It's too many mistakes. He's a college kid, whatever. But you cannot be USC. I mean, you go to Oregon or Ohio State right now, and there's 6 tackles that are 6'6" and above.
Yeah.
There are 6 to 7, 4 to 5 star tackles. One's a senior, a couple are juniors. USC has 2 playable offensive tackles, a center backup left tackle, a kid that's not ready to play at right tackle. In the NIL era with USC's brand, that's on Lincoln. That's the offense. Dude, that's not good enough.
I've always thought, Sark, who now obviously has Texas rolling, And Ryan Day had this issue too. Once Urban left, they became so offensive centric and loved passing that Ohio State, most of my life, has been a defensive first NFL guys at every single position. And then they kind of fell off a cliff because they were just passing and all their wide receivers and quarterbacks were so awesome. Well, then they used NIL to listen. Maybe they're never going to practice like Jim Harbaugh in terms of running power for 70 minutes of a 2-hour practice, but you can just buy those guys. So what did Ohio State do this offseason? They bought the kid from Bama. Like they started buying defensive players. Sark, clearly, like, listen, he's an offensive pass game guy. Like that's who he is at his core, which is fine. He's really good at it. But your defense in practice, like that was always a downfall of Mike Leach. Now he could never recruit at the schools to their level, but you don't create a physicality in practice when you're just passing the ball all over the place. Jim Harbaugh's teams are not physical by accident. That's because the way they practice is a physical practice,
Yeah.
6 months a year. So what does Texas do? They have unlimited money like Ohio State. They start opening the checkbook. Oregon. Now they've had defensive coaches, and Mario's an offensive guy, but he's an O-line guy, and he thinks like that. They're just start paying people. And it's like if USC is going to be on those guys' levels, Texas, Ohio State, because they are going to be consistent powerhouses because they are opening enormous checks right now and paying a lot of money for players. And obviously Lincoln, he is going to be able to figure out the offense over time. Like that is his baby. He knows that. But defensively, they're going to have to be cutting huge checks for defensive players because that's kind of the name of the game now.
I mean, one of their linebackers is 6'6", Eric Gentry. He didn't play, or if he did, not much. And their tackling was just exposed. But their linebackers aren't big. They're not intimidating. I mean, they have one guy, Anthony Lucas, that will get drafted defensively. I'm talking first 2-3 rounds, probably gets drafted. They just don't have enough great players. They have a kid named Jacoby Lane's his name. He's a wide receiver. He's like 6'5" out of Arizona. He's a very, very tough to defend. Deuce Robinson, very tough to defend. They're like 6'5" wide receivers. They're very good players. They're not great. They're not like the Ohio State kid or the Alabama receiver. But and their NIL, they have $13 million. This is not a poverty program. They've got real money here. Washington's got 7.5. They've got 13 in the NIL. So when I look at their situation, they don't have an elite defensive tackle or they have one good center on offensive line. If you counted all their DO linemen and you had 20 guys, you have Anthony Lucas on the defensive side, Monheim on the offensive line. They got 2 guys that are draftable.
But here, if you think about it, last year Pac-12, wouldn't you say, had one of its best seasons like of the last 20 years. And they won 7 games, right? They went 7-5. And then you go into the Big Ten, which, like the Pac-12 last year, just has, like, on a given game, if you're on the road at Minnesota, at Iowa, like, you can lose, right? Like last year with Lincoln, like you went on the road to Arizona, or I guess Arizona came to USC, but you know what I mean? Like the program was deep, and on any given week, in theory, you should never lose to a Vanderbilt, whoever's the bottom feeder, but the teams in the middle, and we can argue till we're blue in the face, what conference is deeper, the SEC or the Big Ten? I do know if any of those middle tier 6 to 8 win programs play well at home on a given week, they can beat most teams, especially now with the NIL and transfer portal era. It's all kind of watered down. The day and age of like the 2001 Miami, hell, just like 3 years ago, Kirby Smart team with 25 NFL guys starting on his, 2 deep. Like those days are done. You look at Georgia now, they look like a shell of themselves. Those early Saban Bama teams, he kind of loaded up the roster. It doesn't exist anymore. So it's much more watered down, which if you don't get it right in the NIL, if you're not paying, like the top guys are going to garner a lot of money, your talent's not going to be that much different because Minnesota can get a couple transfers here and there. And all of a sudden it's like, this team's not that good. Well, actually they got this guy from there and this other guy from there. And all of a sudden you're down 10 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I thought that was the Tulane loss, but that was an 11-win season. But the way they lost, that was ugly. And this one it's just not acceptable. Again, there was a little wind. That can't keep your offense down to 17 points against Minnesota. Bad
I'll
loss.
tell you this. I didn't sleep much because I stayed up late watching that Cal Miami game.
Oh, Jesus.
And that place, I grew up with my dad going to Memorial Stadium, and the difference in Cal and Stanford, Cal does have a pretty good fan base. And when they're good, that place will fill out. And it was rocking and they were kicking Miami's ass. And you go, this is Mario. He's not coming back to back, winning this thing. And they pulled off one of the craziest comebacks you'll ever see. I mean, what an incredible win. And they're a good example. Like they got some money. They're buying some players.
Well,
And
also,
they're
unlike
not the most well
USC,
coached, but they're talent deep.
also Mario's teams were physical. You didn't love them situationally, but he was a big, strong guy. He's a UFC fan. Like
Yeah.
Oregon was physical with Mario. Miami's physical and tough, and Cam Ward's special. And Miami's got the kind of NIL money. They'll just go buy Cam Ward. I was texting Ryan Russillo today. I said, I watched Cam Ward do that for 2, 3 years in Pullman. Nobody watched him. So it's
Yeah.
like when he went to Miami, I'm like, you guys don't have any idea what you're getting. You have no idea how good this Cam Ward is. He just had no pros around him. So they're for real. Listen, it's hard to ask kids to go from Miami to Cal, 3,000 miles. A lot of these kids, I mean, when I was 18, had you been to the South? Like I didn't, these kids don't
No.
know.
I was having some beers with a buddy last night. I'm like, do you understand what time these guys are going to get home? Do the math. They'd lose hours flying home. If they get on the plane by 1 o'clock, I mean, it's 9 o'clock in the morning when these players are landing. It is pretty crazy, some of these matchups now because of the conference realignment, which also makes it fun. Like that was a real fun game. And Miami got very, very lucky. But it also, you're watching them, you see Bama lose. I think Georgia's a shell of themselves, what they've
Same.
been. So to me, it's like, obviously Texas and Ohio State are really good, but we've seen college football, it's got a little NCAA tournament feel to it. Like,
Yep.
I think there are 7, 8 teams once we get to the top 12 that if Boise makes it, are you watching their running back? He looks like, I mean, the best player in the guy is having one of the most incredible seasons in like the history of college football. Something you would have seen in like the 80s with like Barry Sanders.
The way USC can't stop a powerful running back, Boise State would give USC fits.
Oh, he'd have from 200 plus yards. They gave Oregon fits. And who knows? What if that's like the 12-5 game? Would you want to play Boise State as the 5-12 game?
No.
So it's like I actually think that the playoffs going to have an NFL feel a little bit with a little NCAA tournament. You're going to have a couple. Is Ohio State down 10 in the going into the fourth quarter? It's football too. It's only one game. It's not a best of 5 series.
That's right. John Middlekauff, as always, crushed it. Thanks, buddy.
A lot of football, Colin. Talk soon.